Good evening and welcome to Young Puns. It's 9 p.m. or a little over 9 p.m. on the East Coast. I am your host, Gene Mitchell. Alongside me is the editor-in-chief of the cluster here at Mercer University, Liz Bibb. We also have here with us the former Student Government Association president, Trent White. Last but certainly not least, my good friend, Matt Hickman. He's a four-time Student Government Association senator and currently serves as the chief justice of the Judicial Council here at Mercer University. We are in one of my favorite coffee shop, guys, right across from Mercer University, and that's Jittery Joe's, ran by our good friend over here. You can't see him, but his name's Dustin. And guys, I am so excited about our first show. I remember back when we were in South Carolina, we were talking about this show, about the creation of it, and we ended up doing two things and doing two things well, and that's one, talking about politics and only in the way that young people can at Mercer University. Two, having an open discussion and talk about the issues. What are the issues that surround the topics of the day? And then last but not least, probably doing it with a little bit of a smile. So Liz, why don't you go ahead and introduce us to the Florida primary. This is a big day for the Republican primary. Why don't you go ahead and get us updated on the polls.
Thanks, Gene. As we know, the Florida primary results are in by this point. Florida is in a unique situation because it's a state that spans two time zones. However, Romney came out strong almost from the beginning, and I'm going to pick up my phone here to give some live results. We're looking at 94.6% of the precincts reporting, with Mitt Romney in at 46.6%, Newt Gingrich coming in second with 31.8%, Rick Santorum with 13.3%, and Ron Paul finishing with 7% of the vote.
Trent, you look at the results coming in from Florida. As someone as yourself who's run a campaign at a much smaller level, albeit, but you know, it's very apparent Mitt's going to win this race. What did he do different from South Carolina here in Florida?
Yeah, Mitt's definitely going to win. He came from South Carolina. Both he and Newt did. With Mitt was in the dumps, Newt not so much. He came on a hightail.
Yeah.
What's probably more important is what Newt didn't do, or what Newt did that didn't work. But going back to Mitt, Mitt had great debate performances. That's
Absolutely.
Something that Florida voters really looked at.
Yeah.
He was able to attack Newt both on the debates and definitely in his negative campaign ads all across the state. He outspent Newt Gingrich by about 5-1, and 92% of those ads in Florida were negative. So that's what Mitt did. That's what propelled him to the win.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just the bombardment, Liz, of all the negative campaign ads, as Trent said, millions of dollars, $15 million I think is what Mitt dropped into the state. Newt only had $3 million. It looked like a rerun of Iowa where Mitt just said, we're going to eviscerate Newt Gingrich, we're going to get him out of the way, wipe him off the map. And that's what he tried to do. He tried to eviscerate, once again, Newt Gingrich in Florida because he sees him as a very viable threat.
No, that's really true. Romney has definitely stepped up his negativity once he's gotten down to the South. The South is known for dirtier politics, and I think we've really seen that as the candidates have traveled down here, especially in South Carolina. Florida has proven to be the same. We all know that Florida is a really big media market for candidates who are competing in a primary, and Mitt Romney has come out with some very negative campaign ads. One that was so bad that NBC's Tom Brokaw is actually asking him to pull. The ad features nothing but a newscast of Tom Brokaw talking about Newt's scandals back in 1997. Let's take a look at that clip.
Good evening. Newt Gingrich, who came to power, after all, preaching a higher standard in American politics, a man who brought down another speaker on ethics accusations. Tonight, he has on his own record the judgment of his peers, Democrat and Republican alike, by an overwhelming vote. They found him guilty of ethics violations. They charged him a very large financial penalty, and several of them raised serious questions about his future effectiveness.
I'm Mitt Romney, and I approve this message.
And it's not just on the airwaves that he's attacking Newt. He's taken to mocking him at rallies as well, like an appearance where he pokes fun at the former speaker's poor debate performance in Florida so far. So let's take a look at him talking to voters about this.
Let's look at this clip right here.
Those debates were fun. Wasn't that a hoot? That was great. Wow. Gosh, you guys were terrific. I don't know if you were screaming on TV or not when you were watching, but I felt energy just up there on the stage. It could not have been better. The first debate, of course, the audience was quiet, and Speaker Gingrich said that threw him off. He can't debate before a quiet audience. Then the next audience was very loud, very loud. And he said that threw him off. He can't debate before a real loud audience. It's like Goldilocks, you know. Can't have it this way. It has to be just so.
Goldilocks.
Matt, as we'll find out later, looking at that clip, you're somewhat of a Newt expert. And as we just looked at that last clip again, unlike in South Carolina, where Romney was, I don't know how to explain this, but he was, as some people would say, soft in the debates. Seemed like he had a glass jaw. He comes back. He gets a new debate coach, and he comes back and he hits hard. I'm talking about hard in the next two debates. Talk a little bit about the two debates that happened in Florida and what Mitt did differently.
All right. Well, Mitt definitely stepped up the game, and he was more on the attack than he has been. He normally has been just absorbing the blows that Gingrich has been delivering him when he was in South Carolina. Romney removed or exposed his tax records to everybody, so Newt couldn't attack him on that. He's been very transparent with those, so you can't attack him on that. The moderator for the debates were much stronger in Florida, so he couldn't attack that. So he lost a whole bunch of ammunition that he normally used, and he really had to focus on policy and issues.
But he really didn't focus so much on policy. I mean, remember the second debate, we're looking at the crowd, how they would always react to Mitt, and I was talking to Trent this earlier, is that really, if you looked at what they were arguing against one another, they were doing the exact same thing. You have the back and forth with Newt saying, you know, you have offshore accounts, you have this, you have that, and then Mitt Romney comes back, doesn't deny he has all those things, but just says, Newt, you've got the same thing, and then you hear it, it's like a 5th grade class where, you know, back when I was a kid, people would say burnt, and everybody just goes, ooh, and that seemed to be the driving issue of the debate, not the actual issues, but about the fact that Mitt Romney was right, Trent? He made him look like a hypocrite.
The reason that works for Mitt is because he's changed his strategy to, yes, I'm successful, and it's working for him. You know, he's not going to apologize for being successful. Republicans know he's rich. He's not a common man. So, whereas earlier in the season, he wanted to come off as a more common man, a Main Street guy. He's not doing that anymore because that's not him, and Newt's able to attack him on that. He's been able to say, yes, I'm successful, I'm not apologizing for it, and Republicans really don't care.
Do Republicans, and man, I'll throw it back to you, do Republicans really not care so much about Mitt Romney's record as they do in the fact that they really are, and we saw this in South Carolina, it seemed to be kind of an issue, and this is why, well, Newt heralded it anyway, that he can defeat Barack Obama in the debates. Did Mitt show here in Florida that he can debate Barack Obama in the fall?
Right. I have some clips that will show that clearly. The debates are really important this go around because Barack Obama is such a great orator and has really good rhetoric, and he's very strong on TV and in the radio, and every time you see him, he has a really good voice for politics. And so what Republicans are looking for is someone who can combat that, and they're looking for the general election and who can do well against Barack Obama. And when they were in South Carolina, that was clearly Newt. He came out strong, he came out heavy hitting, and he had a lot of ammo in his back pocket that he could use. But then when he came to South Carolina, he lost a lot of ammunition, and in my opinion, he wasn't ready to be the front runner, and he wasn't ready to be attacked from all sides, even from Ron Paul. Like when he said that some people, or he doesn't want to go to the moon, but that some politicians probably sit there. And then I have some clips of Mitt Romney just going at him. And I don't think he was ready for that, and I don't think his debate coach was ready for that because he was used to being second and always flying under the radar, but when you're a front runner, you have to deal with that.
So we definitely got the debates right there, but Liz, let's go back to the first point Trent made about the negative campaign ads, where you're talking about, especially the Tom Brokaw thing, because I want to get the media perspective here, being the only journalist here on set. I'm no journalist, I write for a food article, that's about it a week. But, you know, Liz, Tom Brokaw came out and was pretty upset about this negative campaign ad, especially the clip that we just showed earlier. What was Tom Brokaw's response, an appropriate response as someone from the media, or was it something that, did it have validity, or was it something that he had to do to seem like he was objective to the race?
Well, Gene, as a journalist, you know I'm going to be the first person to say that it's my job to report the facts. It's any journalist's job to report the facts. What Tom Brokaw,
I'm going to be the first person to disagree with you.
I know, we're going to get into that. You're going to like, we're going to talk about that. It's all right. It's all right. What Tom Brokaw said in 1997 was a fact at the time. Newt was under investigation for ethical violations.
Right.
Mitt Romney, the candidates are coming under fire for rewriting history. Mitt Romney has found evidence to back this claim up about Newt Gingrich. Now, I understand where Tom Brokaw is coming from as a journalist. Gene, you would be the first person to know how much I value objective reporting and how much I value being viewed as an objective reporter. However, Brokaw has not come out and endorsed a candidate. Brokaw has not come out and gone against a candidate. I do admire his commitment to objective journalism in this point, but basically, you know, I think it shows that he's a good journalist, that they're turning to him to look for the facts. I think it might have been a little bit sneaky by Romney's camp to do this, but he's using facts to support his argument.
That's a great point, Trent. When looking at this, obviously that Mitt Romney posts the ad. Brokaw says what he says.
Right.
What did Mitt Romney's campaign, did they have a response to what Brokaw said?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, Matt Lauer interviewed Mitt Romney, I think, a few days after at least.
Right.
Mitt's response was, we'll talk to the lawyers, we'll talk to NBC, and
We'll talk to who?
We'll talk to the lawyers. And so,
wait a minute. You're telling me that he gets asked about an ad that he posted.
right.
And then he says,
We'll see if it's legal to do it.
What's
If it's, not if it's ethical,
okay,
if it's
so
legal.
for all
That
of you watching this, if you ever think about committing a crime, do the crime first and then talk to a lawyer to see if it's okay
Well,
to
if
do
you're
that.
Mitt Romney and you have an offshore account to pay for it, I guess.
Well, I mean, this goes to a subject that, and this is why I think Mitt Romney's got a glass jaw. I think he's done a good job here, but I think, unfortunately, if you look at the New York Times when they post that it was his campaign's idea to turn it all around and not Mitt Romney's. This is it right here. He can't make an answer. He can't give an answer unless it's poll tested. The man was asked, if you look back in South Carolina, and this is why he lost in South Carolina, because he's asked point blank, easiest question in the world, will you follow your father's example? And what does he say?
Maybe.
Maybe. How do you say maybe to your father's example? You're a conservative, for God's sakes. This is exactly why Jeb Bush did not want to endorse anyone, aside from the fact that he may be possibly running for president. But Trent, this is a continuing theme, right? Is this going to keep going after Florida?
Yeah, of course he doesn't come off as a common man,
Right.
like I said earlier. That's not what he's trying to do now. He's found his strong suit. He's found what's going to work for him, and he's not going to apologize for being successful. And that goes back to the lawyer comment.
But he can be successful, Trent, but he's not saying anything. I mean, his father was always accused of being too talkative. But he doesn't say anything at all unless there's been a poll that says, if you say this, it's going to be great. How is he different from Barack Obama? Isn't that the argument that Newt's making, that he's the same person? I know obviously Newt's not making the argument. That's why he lost in Florida.
We've seen in the last debates, he's been able to attack Newt Gingrich, as Matt pointed out. His jaw's getting stronger. Maybe it's not made of glass anymore. Maybe it's made of ceramic at least.
I'll concede to that. Okay, I'll concede that. And this is obviously the point that we're going to talk about larger about how long this primary is going to go.
Right.
And conventionally, personally, I'm okay with it keep going because I think it's going to be good for Barack Obama.
Yeah.
By the way, for all of those of you watching at home, if you don't know, I'm a Democrat. I'm not going to apologize about it. I'm okay with it. With that being said...
Sorry, he's not sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sorry. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sorry. You write that down. But the fact is that Mitt Romney, I still think he's got a weak jaw. I think Obama's going to beat him up. But at some point, I think Newt is doing him a tiny favor because he's making it, or at least he's making his organization tougher. I don't know if it's actually making Mitt tougher because they're coming out, but they're responding. It's not an instinct. He's not saying anything. There's no policy behind it. He's just, it's easy to beat up on Newt because of all the baggage Newt's got. Right, Matt? How much baggage this man got? Go ahead.
Well, it really depends on what you're talking about and what Newt can do with that baggage. In the first debate, he was able to turn that and spin it on the media and make it the media's problem that came out, and it wasn't so much directed at Newt. But I think we have a guest coming later, Dr. Lori Johnson, and she's a good friend of ours. And she's going to talk about how women play a role in this election, and I think she's going to expand more on it later, but that's where it really started to hurt Newt, all the baggage that he has.
Yeah, I want to...
and women make up 50% of the vote, and so that makes it more than 50% of the vote.
More than
and so that
as it turns out, we're the
really
minority.
Yeah. That makes it really hard for him as a candidate, especially when you focus on the general election.
I wanna go off of what Matt's saying about the media, because obviously I have a bone to pick with Newt. He hates us. He hates the media, and he made
The
that
liberal media.
The liberal media. They're ruining
The liberal
America,
media.
and he made that incredibly apparent with his attack on John King during the debate in South Carolina. I was there. I saw him do it. It was.
She was at the debate.
I was at the debate. I got to go with another good friend of ours, Chase Williams. To
Meanwhile, Matt and I, we were asleep in a La Hacienda in the Mexican restaurant trying to watch the debate, but I was so tired because we've been driving all over the dang state in a van. But go ahead, tell them, what did John King do? I think you got a point.
Well,
what did John King do that
John
compare it to the Wolf Blitzer debate.
John King leads with a question about Newt Gingrich's ex-wife coming out with a tell-all scandal the day of the debate. Newt knows he's going to lead with this question. Newt is ready to just, bash him for it completely. He's ready to get on him about it. And John King just completely crumbles. He gets defensive. Wolf Blitzer, however, recently in Florida, when Newt tries to do the same thing, Wolf, you're not running this debate properly.
Liz,
Wolf,
as a journalist, you're John King. You're sitting there. You know you're asking that question. Newt knows you're asking that question. Why does he do what he did? Why does he fold?
I just think he's not as experienced of a journalist as Wolf Blitzer is. But I want to bring this back to Newt.
I want to bring it back to Newt too, because I mentioned some clips earlier that I want to show, and it kind of highlights what Liz is talking about, and it talks about the trifecta that kind of brought down Newt. It's a clip of Newt. One is from the South Carolina primary, and the other one is from the Florida primary.
Tax returns. Let me bring this to Speaker Gingrich. Earlier this week, you said Governor Romney, after he released his taxes, you said that you were satisfied with the level of transparency of his personal finances when it comes to this. And I just want to reiterate and ask you, are you satisfied right now with the level of transparency as far as his personal finances?
Well, you and I have a great relationship. It goes back a long way. I'm with him. This is a nonsense question. Look, how about if the four of us agree for the rest of the evening, we'll actually talk about issues that relate to governing America.
Mr. Speaker, you made an issue of this week when you said that he lives in a world of Swiss bank and Cayman Island bank accounts. I didn't say that, you did.
I did, and I'm perfectly happy to say that on an interview on some TV show, but this is a national debate where you have a chance to get the four of us to talk about a whole range of issues.
But if you make a serious accusation against Governor Romney like that, you need to explain that.
You want to try again? I mean,
wouldn't it be nice if people didn't make accusations somewhere else that they weren't willing to defend here?
Okay. All right. Okay.
Only Newt Gingrich can beat Obama.
More people have been put on food stamps by Barack Obama than any president in American history. I believe every American of every background has been endowed by their Creator with the right to pursue happiness, and if that makes liberals unhappy, I'm going to continue to find ways to help poor people learn how to get a job, learn how to get a better job, and learn someday to own the job. I'm Newt Gingrich, and I approve this message.
The reason I wanted to show those clips, just to bring it full circle from where we started with the debates and end this with the debates, kind of at least for me, is those are the two Newts that you get when you deal, I guess, with Newt Gingrich, and it begs viewers and voters to ask, which Newt do I want, and is this the person that I want going up against Barack Obama? The South Carolina Newt was definitely the person you want to go up against Barack Obama, but as you can see from those clips, he was not, and that really resonated with the voters, especially in Florida, and they were like, oh, I don't know if he can beat Obama, but Romney is looking very, very strong, and it also hurt him going into the polls because he lost all that momentum from South Carolina, and that is very dangerous, especially when you go into 46 more states.
Right, he's starting to just look angry. He's angry at the media. I know, I'm harping on it, but I'm coming back to it. It worked in South Carolina, but it has come.
It worked against John King.
It works, but the South Carolinians hate the media, but it has come back and it has hit him hard in Florida because Florida is a big media state. He's being outspent 5-1, as we've already mentioned. That's happening. His ads are very much on the defensive rather than being, Romney's ads are negative, yes, but Newt's ads are being used to make up for mistakes that he has made. He's pandering to the Latino voters with an ad about how America can become Cuba if President Obama is elected again. Apparently we're going to become a socialist nation. And he also had an insanely embarrassing for him ad where he apologized in Spanish for calling Spanish the language of the ghetto. It was just, it was sad. I watched it, was awkward, it was sad.
But doesn't that set him up? I want to go through this quickly because I do think the point about that is that Republicans, for the most part, have jumped off ship for the Hispanic vote. Newt is at least trying to play for those votes. Obviously, albeit accused him of playing pandering to states. But you had a tweet that you wanted to read real quick.
Well, yeah, and it's not about technically about the Latino vote that Newt's trying to do, but it's just kind of shows how Newt's becoming an object of ridicule in the media because he just really doesn't understand. He's not keeping up. Romney does. Romney understands how important Twitter is in a campaign. I just read a really interesting article in the New York Times recently about this. After Newt proposed his moon colony, Romney actually got the hashtag grandiose Newt to trend on Twitter, and so I looked on Twitter and I found
grandiose? Is that really grandiose?
Grandiose Newt. That's what it is. Look it up. Hashtag grandiose Newt. There's some pretty funny ones.
Pull that up.
My funniest one we got it right here. We've got and I have the names blocked out, but it's a retweet. It's hashtag grandiose Newt. We had no interest in going to war with the Japanese when they kicked us off the Virginia ballot. And that's obviously a reference to Newt comparing not being on the Virginia ballot to Pearl Harbor, one of the greatest tragedies in United States history.
Looking at that, and I definitely, with all that being said, it's definitely going to be a two-person race going forward. We got to talk about, just a little bit before we go, I know we're coming out of time, Rick Santorum. Newt Gingrich has been trying to sell as hard as he can. When the conservative base consolidates, he'll be able to take that, and Mitt Romney will never be able to get any of those votes, and he'll overtake him. The polls seem to be showing today otherwise from Florida, because as we say, even if you took what Santorum got and what Gingrich got, he doesn't overtake Romney. However, Santorum has, I think, and I don't want to say it like this because it's really personal, but I think Santorum kind of has a political opportunity, unfortunately, because of his daughter being sick. I don't think anyone would argue that if he got out of the race right now, that they would completely understand he's got no money.
Right.
His daughter's sick she's got a condition that always goes on. Trent, tell me right now, just real brief, what is Rick Santorum's exit strategy?
First of all, you said Rick Santorum's exit strategy in a sentence without laughing. I think spreadingsantorum.com. But okay, real quick.
We're talking about his sick daughter.
I know. Okay.
Oh my God!
You mentioned that in Florida, in Florida you add Newt and Santorum together. They still don't. You can't say the name without laughing. They still don't meet Romney. Florida's not the rest of the country. Super Tuesday, more conservative states, a lot more southern states. I think it might be a game change there. Santorum, it's probably time for him to get out. He's a family values guy. He can look to the country and say, I really care about my family right now, which I'm sure he does. I know he does. I need to look out what's best for my daughter, what's best for my family. Yeah. I'm out of money. This is taking a huge toll on our family. Yeah. It's really stressful. He can get out and America say that was awesome of him, and then he has a chance to come back in 4 years because he's got a huge name for himself.
All right, we got to leave it there. Yeah. If we can just scroll up a little bit, Liz, just tell us a little bit about. We got to go to break. So thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to come right back. We're going to start talking about something that should be important to all of you Mercerians out there. That's Mercer politics. Liz, just give us a brief update about what's going to come up after the break.
Right after the break, we're going to be giving another update on the polls, which should be pretty much the same thing that we've had going on. Romney has won, but maybe we've got a final declaration at this point. And we're going to be talking a lot to these two gentlemen over here who, as we know, are on SGA. They're going to be talking about the Mercer Recycling Program, which we're trying to get started. We're going to be talking about judicial review, which we're also trying to get started. And I believe they're going to explain to you a little bit more about what special funding is and how to get it. So look forward to seeing you when we get back.
know when you said, "That's so gay," you probably thought it didn't matter.
Well, it mattered to me.
Nine out of 10 lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgendered students report being harassed at school in the last year. You don't mock race or religion. Why mock sexuality?
The Cluster is Mercer's student newspaper. It is staffed and produced entirely by Mercer students. The paper is named after Jesse Mercer's Book of Hymns and has been published since 1920. The Cluster has won various awards from the Georgia College Press Association, including several first-place awards for layout and design and sports. The Cluster launched its first website in February of 2011 and can now be viewed online at www.mercercluster.com. To get involved with the Cluster, you can attend a story meeting, held every other Wednesday at 10 a.m. in the Cluster office on the 3rd floor of Connell Student Center. You can also email Editor-in-Chief Liz Bibb at editor@mercercluster.com for more information.
Hello, my name is Matt.
I'm Sean, we're 303.
And right now you're watching Mercer 99.
Welcome back to Young Puns, everyone. It is right at 10 o'clock here on the East Coast. We have 97.8% reporting from Florida now. So unless that 0.2%, even if that 0.2% really goes for Gingrich, he doesn't have much of a chance now. So Mitt Romney finishes out strong at 46.4% in Florida.
How much did Newt get?
Let's see. Let me get my phone back up. Newt got 31.9%. As Trent pointed out earlier, you add Newt and Santorum together, you still don't have Romney in Florida. And speaking of Trent, we're about to go over to Senator White here for his segment, That's Why I'm a Democrat.
Yes, Liz, this segment is called That's Why I'm a Democrat, in which I explain how the Democratic Party works tirelessly and generously to save America from the hands of evil Republicans. Last year, Senator David Wu, a Democrat from Oregon, decided to resign after a lengthy scandal, which began with him sending pictures of himself dressed as a tiger to campaign staffers at 1 in the morning and ended with the accusation of an unwanted sexual advance. Republicans are responsible for wrongly labeling Senator Wu as mentally unstable, when clearly he was simply raising awareness for endangered Bengal tigers. This week, nonetheless, begins the search by both parties for feline candidates to replace Wu. On the Republican ticket is Marie. Marie gained national notoriety when she starred in a family-friendly film, The Aristocats. Though she has a virtually endless amount of campaign finances, they are largely self-funded, and voters complain that she is out of touch with Main Street America. Criticisms of Marie include her unwillingness to release her tax statements, and that she is too narrow-minded and not diverse enough to represent all Americans. In response, Marie said, "Everybody wants to be a cat." 2. Ceiling Cat is running as an independent. Ceiling Cat has run a campaign exclusively through the internet and has become a viral sensation across the country. When asked why the candidate did not want to utilize other media sources, Ceiling Cat commented, "I can has internets, I can has oath of office." Ceiling Cat's most difficult challenge will be getting supporters out of their mom's basements and to the polls. The Democrats have put up Tony the Tiger, a ferocious candidate. Tony has surged in recent polls. This performance has been propelled largely by young voters. Twitter user and 5-year-old Democrat Kay Garden Sucks is an example of this trend. He writes, "I'm voting Tony. He's great!" Tony's biggest agenda item is reforming child nutrition. He maintains that a balanced breakfast inevitably leads to a balanced budget. But seriously, folks, I'd rather have a crazy Democrat in a tiger suit than a crazy Republican who seeks to undermine child labor laws by sending impoverished kids to work as janitors in our school systems, or wants to begin an era of space imperialism by colonizing the moon, or terrorizes New York City because he is possessed by Gozer, the Sumerian god of destruction. Tell me that man does not look like the State Park marshmallow. Tell me he doesn't.
I can't.
And that, everyone, is why I'm a Democrat.
You know, Liz, that's a really good point, talking about looking like the State Park marshmallow man. Speaking of having too much waste, not knowing what to do with it, 2 weeks ago, our good friend Katie Martin, and I want to get a little serious here, and unfortunately Katie couldn't be with us today because she had to go home back for personal reasons. But Katie Martin, who represents the Students for Environmental Action, came in front of SGA to ask for special funding for an issue that I think a lot of Mercerian students think is a very important issue, and that's recycling here on campus. Well, aside from Katie, I think probably the next best person, I'm going to look right at you, Trent, because I know you worked with her when you were president. This was a big issue for you. Tell us a little bit about the program, what Katie was asking for, and it didn't get passed. So just talk about the legislation. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we started the recycling program campus-wide in the fall, and then so a few weeks ago, we met with the university-wide committee to evaluate what was going on with the program one semester in. What we found was great. The biggest problem is that participation is so high, and I think that's a good problem to have. Participation is so high that even though we pick up recycling, or the university picks up recycling twice a week on their rounds, the bins are overflowing every time they go to pick it up. So participation is high, but mixing is low. So paper being in the plastic bins or vice versa, that's low. People are following the rules, so to say. And so what came out of that meeting was a request from, oh, wow. Obviously, we're still in Jittery Joe's.
Newton Town.
So what came out of that meeting is the decision to expand the recycling program to keep up with it. And Katie went with Students for Environmental Action to request funds from SGA in our special funding budget.
How much? How much she asking for?
She asked for about between $7,000 and $8,000.
Whoa!
Yeah, it's a lot.
What's that going towards?
It buys 3 bins that will fit in with the other bins. They're exactly the same as the other bins that are already on campus. And these bins are designed to last up to I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years. I'm not sure exactly on the amounts, but they're durable bins. They fit in with the aesthetic feel of campus. That's what we like, the family feel, the Mercer colors, Mercer logo, all of that.
Yeah.
And so she went to SGA, asked for the funds. SGA looked at it, said this is a lot of money. Well, I should say some of SGA looked at it and said this is a lot of money, we don't want to fund it right now. There were senators who wanted to go ahead and fund it. And then what decided was that we would postpone for 2 weeks so that President Locke had time to go to President Underwood and request funds from him for recycling.
So Trent, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you about an alternative here. You're saying the bins are overflowing. That already answered one question I had about it, was that I've heard apparently false rumors that the bins aren't being used. You have negated that, and that's not true. Here's my question: how often? You're saying they're overflowing. How often is it being picked up? Is it possible that this could be implemented if it were picked up more frequently? No, that's not. We literally need more bins.
They do 2 rounds to pick up the recycling every week.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, Nationals, who does our waste disposal and now our recycling, goes around twice a week to pick up the bins. And this request is coming from them to get more bins. So the people who run it are saying we need more, we can't keep up.
How many bins does $7,000 get us?
3 bins.
And where are they going to be placed at around campus?
We're looking at, currently there's only one in the apartments or near the apartments. So we need another one over there because those are a lot of people, and that one is constantly overflowing. And then there's a request to have one in the Student Center, maybe the CAF, or outside of the Student Center, so that there's a central location on campus and that there's publicity every time you walk through the Student Center. 3, we want one near MEP or other freshman housing. There's a Green Munster right now. I don't know if you guys heard of the Green Munster.
I remember the Green Munster. That was from our freshman year, yeah.
It's behind MEP now, and it's still overflowing.
Now, Trent, we did this. This is a lot of money, and you will acknowledge that. And I'm not saying it's not for a worthy cause, but here's my question: if SGA does not fund this money, and give me the numbers. This is what percent of the budget for special funding, isn't it? It's a significant percent,
40,
isn't it?
Yeah,
40.
It's right around that.
Okay. Well, what I'm wondering is, if SGA does not fund this entire thing, is it possible to get this funding for this somewhere else? Is it possible to split? Is this all falling on SGA's shoulders right now? Is what I'm asking.
Well, let me give you the breakdown. Halfway through the year. So last week, we're over halfway through the year.
So right now is the halfway mark for the fiscal year.
No. We're over the halfway mark for SGA.
Okay.
At that point, we have spent 10% of the special funding budget. So, do we need to find other alternative locations for the money? No, because we're not spending the money that we do have. So we've spent 10%. We're looking at spending another 40% with these bins. Even if we spend all of this money, we still have more money left over than we used the entire last semester.
Matt, can you explain to our viewers what special funding is for those who might not know?
Sure.
I'm not trying to cut you off, but I think...
No, that's okay. SGA has 3 types of funding. You have bear grants, which goes to organizations approved by SGA, and then you have special funding and conference and lodging. Special funding is new this year. Last year it was slightly different, and we had one big pool of money called special funding. And we broke it up into different segments this year. One is lodging.
Conference and lodging.
Yeah, conference and lodging, and that covers any travel expenses that you might have as regulated.
Student organizations,
yeah, student organizations.
Stop for student organizations, right?
Yeah, right. Every student organization can apply. There's a lot less rules, but basically, conference and lodging applies to any type of travel that you might have as directed by BOA guidelines. And then,
BOA, of course, being the Board of Appropriations from the university.
Then you have special funding, which is a completely separate fund, where you can request money for just about anything, and it's a lot more open, and we like to distribute that out to people that are doing good things for the student body.
Both of you guys have been on Senate for 4 years. I will just say, I'm not speaking as parliamentarian. I am parliamentarian of SGA, as you guys all know. But I'm not speaking as a parliamentarian. I'm speaking as a student. I see these things, and I heard the arguments in the Senate. You guys, I want to get your feedback on this. Trent, you and I have talked off camera about this.
Yeah.
I think the arguments that have been put against legislation like this, it's 40%. As you said, you take what we've spent already for half a year plus this, we put us right at the halfway mark of what we can use. If these are such big issues, and you and I talked a lot about this, I thought, and I still think this is the way it was, even though I know you're going to disagree with me on this, that the spending used to be come first served. If you come up, you apply. If it's any sort of merit system that we think of, you get it. Senator Holloway this year has come out and said, you know what, we're not going to do that anymore. We have new legislation now where we're not going to consider everyone that may potentially, these hypothetical organizations are going to come out. And it's going to be first come, first, and I love this word, first considered. That is that's like vague, explaining the vague. That's more vague than the Sopranos' final season. Why hasn't there been legislation to come out and say, you know what, since we have a problem with this, why don't we go ahead and monitor organizations that come in and give a cap? Or better yet, why don't we just take the money and split it up against all the organizations, and then we have to worry about this process? Why don't we do that? Why did that happen?
Okay, first off, Gene, I think the reason it's so confusing is that we never used this language before. We never had first come, first served. We have, however, always used the phrase first come, first considered. This is just the first year that we put it on paper. So in our
but that's in the legislation.
Well, hold on. This is the first year we put it on paper, but we've always used it during our discussions. So what that means, basically, is that we only consider the piece before them, and or SGA only considers the piece of legislation that's before us. We don't think about what if people come, what are other organizations doing. We're looking at what we have in the budget, what is before us, does it merit the funding that we get. And the reason that we don't want to do caps, in my opinion, the reason I would be opposed to this, is that because bear grants are used for taking care of organizational needs. That's what bear grants are for. You come, these are the day-to-day funding. Special funding, however, is supposed to be competitive funding. So we want the best and the brightest of our student organizations to compete for this funding and to present us with great ideas that can get funded.
Matt, tell me, if that's the case, if special funding is about a competition, if it's about the best and the brightest, then why do I keep hearing these arguments that I just described earlier of we've got to consider the fact that we've got an entire year, this is so much money, which we're not raising taxes, we're not the federal government here. Yeah. We get approved for this by the BOA. Yeah. If we don't use it, what's going to happen? Right. We lose it. They're going to say you don't need it. What is this argument coming from? I mean, you don't have to give me names, but where's this argument coming from?
Well, it's blunt, but I honestly think it comes from people who don't necessarily understand the rules of the special funding and of the different kinds of funding that we have available for students. And I happen to agree with Senator White on this issue, and I definitely think that we should be rewarding students who do such good things for campus, like SCA and these recycling bins. Like, that's an obvious need that we can meet, and students are really excited about. So I'm all for funding that with SGA. But I like to see our dollars go as far as possible, so that's why I always encourage students to explore other routes to get money besides SGA, because there are other routes where just the most well-known source of money. And so,
Liz, I've got one more question. I know we got to go because we're getting close.
We are getting close.
I got one more. Here. I got one more question, and if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But you know, I look at these kinds of things, and if you ask a question like that, I've got to think they have some. Are there other organizations that people are thinking about that may also want big funding?
Yes. Okay. The week after, we decided not to fund SCA in its entirety.
To table it.
To table it. Okay.
All right.
We haven't formally decided yet.
Yeah.
The week after, RUF, the Reformed University Fellowship, came to SGA and asked for a concert, for SGA to fund a concert for $4,200. The senators who were most opposed to funding Students for Environmental Action the week before are
very pro.
Are members and leaders.
The same questions.
Are members and leaders of RUF, and so, in my opinion, you know, I don't want to accuse anyone of anything, but what we saw is that they weren't following the rules of the legislation that we have. They were not doing first come, first consider. They were thinking, if this passes now, my organization can't get funded in the future.
But it can it? There's enough money for both organizations, right?
I don't think so.
There's not.
But people often get confused about first come, first considered and the definition of that. And as it has been explained to me, as first come, first considered means that we're not guaranteeing you money, because first come, first served means you are definitely getting money.
It sounds like you're going through the lunch line, holding out your hand,
right?
And
and that's not what these funds are for.
No.
We're not about handouts here.
No government
handouts.
I wanted to talk about judicial review. I don't think we're going to have time.
I don't think we're going to have time.
Liz,
this has been a really interesting insight into the inner workings of SGA from three people who are constantly there. SGA 5:30, Connell Center 1.
The cluster would come to SGA.
Yeah, we'll talk, Gene. But we're going to go to break now, and when we come back, we're going to have Dr. Lori Johnson talking to us about women and the Republican primary. See y'all when we get back.
The Cluster is Mercer's student newspaper. It is staffed and produced entirely by Mercer students. The paper is named after Jesse Mercer's Book of Hymns and has been published since 1920. The Cluster has won various awards from the Georgia College Press Association, including several first-place awards for layout and design and sports. The Cluster launched its first website in February of 2011 and can now be viewed online at www.mercercluster.com. To get involved with the Cluster, you can attend a story meeting held every other Wednesday at 10 a.m. in the Cluster office on the third floor of Connell Student Center. You can also email Editor-in-Chief Liz Bibb at editor@mercercluster.com for more information.
Hey! John Reeve here. You're watching Mercer 99. Get your stuff.
Welcome back to Young Puns. I'm your host, Gene Mitchell. By my counts, it's about 10:20 right now. If you would just please listen to my good co-host, Liz, here as she informs you on what's happening right now with the Florida primary.
Well, nothing has changed in that last 0.2%. Romney has still come out victorious.
Wow.
CNN and Politico have both declared him the victor of the Florida primary, and he's declared himself the victor of the nomination at this point, it looks like. Politico reports that Romney did not just claim victory Tuesday night, he sent a clear message to Newt Gingrich: the nomination is mine. So he's presenting himself as the inevitable candidate at this point, and I guess we'll have to see how that pans out for him. Right now we're going to go over to my good friend Matt, and he's going to tell us about conservative values.
I sure am. One thing I love about primary season is that somebody always wins, and in this case it's always a Republican, which leads into some of my conservative values. If you haven't heard already, I would be the Republican correspondent for this show, even though I work for the Democratic caucus, but details really aren't important for, conservatives. The segment is about real conservatives and real Republicans, and to be a real Republican, you have to subscribe to a few basic principles, including protecting our Second Amendment rights, protecting the sanctity of marriage, kicking foreign ass at least once a decade, and believing that the devil invented taxes. But above all, Republicans love one thing, as I said earlier, winning. If you don't believe me, then let's just take a look at the Republican glory days, also known as American history, since the Civil War. Since then, Republicans have been all about kicking ass and taking names, just as Major General Sherman. But here are some stats, so no one can argue me that Republicans are simply the best. First, 18 out of 28 presidents since Lincoln have been Republican and controlled the White House from 1861 to 1933 with only 22 years of interruption, of which include the not-so-noteworthy presidents like Andrew Johnson, who only became president after Lincoln was assassinated, but fortunately America realized this atrocity and quickly told Johnson libs need not apply, booting him out of office and America electing General Ulysses S. Grant, winner of the Civil War. Another big fat Democratic mistake was Grover Cleveland. And much like Grover Cleveland's eating habits, America got a second helping of the big man, but unlike Grover Cleveland, regretted the decision immediately. Plus, during Republican rule, the presidents weren't mere mortals like the Democrats who popped up occasionally. They were badass, gunslinging, horse-riding, true American men. None more so than Republican Theodore Roosevelt. Democrats wish they had someone so utterly badass they could champion. If you've been living under a rock, then let me recap this winning Republican. Teddy was a world-class boxer, created the Rough Riders, was shot before delivering a speech, and delivered the speech while having the bullet in his stomach. He actually had the bullet in him for the rest of his life. And after that, he carried a pistol on his hip at all times, including walking around the White House. And he had a badger as a pet. And so that's right, a badger. Turns out honey badgers do give a shit when Teddy's around. And speaking of Teddy, your child's teddy bear is named after the man. That's right, your child is really snuggled up to a badass Republican, and that's why they feel so safe at night. Okay, sure, the Republican Party has had some trouble since FDR was elected in 1933, but let's look at some elections. For me, as a true conservative, two come to mind, and they're all about winning and winning big. First is Nixon. He won the 1972 election against George McGovern. Nobody knows who that is. With 520 of the 538 electoral college votes. The notorious liberal Massachusetts and Washington, D.C. were the only places in America who supported McGovern. There is only one other candidate who won a higher percentage of the electoral college, and as you know, and you know who that is? A Republican. But not just any Republican, the best Republican. The greatest Republican, Ronald Reagan. Democrats are pissed we snatched up this candidate, a liberal actor from Hollywood turned conservative god. He won the Electoral College with 525 electoral votes and 59% of the popular vote. During his presidency, he told communism to suck it, made American military power the strongest in the world, developed a booming American economy, and became the centerpiece of every modern Republican campaign. The reason Gingrich did so well in South Carolina is not because of his policies, like going to the moon, but because of his ability to say Ronald Reagan at the end of every sentence. It is a known and undisputed fact that mentioning Ronald Reagan in a speech converts ludicrous statements into completely acceptable comments. For example, if a candidate says, Reagan believed 13-year-olds make great janitors, and so do I, what America actually hears is, let's get America back to work. Now it's time to win the future, and Democrats tried to steal that, but I'm taking it back. And specifically the 2012 election I want to look at, and if you haven't heard, Obama may not be allowed on the ticket. Recently, a Republican judge in Georgia subpoenaed President Obama to appear in court, demanding that Obama provide his birth certificate to prove that he's a natural-born citizen. And since Obama did not appear, the judge is now threatening to ban Obama from the ballot, thank God. And this judge is taking a stand and showing that foreigner who's false, American conservatives. I'm glad Republicans are taking part in this important stand on this important issue during this important time in American history. And the judge from Georgia, an American hero, like Ronald Reagan, should be championed as the badass who found a way to stop the liberal, European-loving communist we all lovingly call Barack Obama from ruining this great country. And I always say, WWRRD, what would Ronald Reagan do? And that answer, my friends, is win. All we do is win. Back to you.
First, I want to point out first, I counted 5 asses. 5 asses in my speech, Matt. One shit, 5 asses. Fantastic. Fantastic.
Oh, my. Matt, that was, first off, I love that monologue was incredible. You know, Liz, if there is someone who knows a thing or two about Ronald Reagan, though, it's Dr. Lori Johnson. Lori Johnson is with us today. She is an associate professor of political science here at Mercer University, and she has a particular interest in constitutional law, in political science, and also women law and politics. She teaches a class actually entitled after that moniker. Dr. Johnson, looking after the polls that come in from the Florida primary, you were with us when we were in South Carolina. Talk a little bit about how women voters possibly impacted what happened here in Florida today.
Well, I mean, the polls before the election showed Romney with a significant lead over Gingrich among women voters, which is not what happened in South Carolina. In South Carolina, Gingrich won among women voters with about 36% to Romney's 30%, and Paul Santorum split the rest. And in Florida, the survey polls before the election happened showed that Romney was at 49% among women compared to 26% for Gingrich among women. So that's a significant margin of win for Romney among women if it turned out that way in the polls. To contrast, among men voters, we had Romney at 37% and Gingrich at 33%. So a lot closer under men voters.
What do you think happened? I think you've got a pretty strong opinion about this, because it seems as if Romney somehow, did Romney win the woman vote, or was there something else at play here, perhaps something that Newt Gingrich did?
Well, I mean, I think Newt's past is certainly an issue for women.
Right.
It's, you know, there's certainly plenty of women who say, we all make mistakes, you can be forgiven, he's apologized and moved on. But I think that there is a combination of political and personal going on here that is distinctive than just, oh, what happened with he and his wives. Because the fact that he was having an affair at the time of the Trump impeachment really was the death knell to his speakership in the House of Representatives. And so it's not just a personal thing, it's also a thing about his leadership and his political history and why he resigned as speaker. So those things go together. I mean, I think for some women, Newt really taps into the anger and the frustration they feel, not just with politics, but with the media, and with both political parties. So he can tap into that for women, and there are women who've been involved in the Tea Party movement, and he certainly appeals to that. On the other hand, Romney is really much more, you know, his past history is more stable. He's been married to one woman, but I think it's going to be tough for either one of them to win very many women voters in the general election, because one of the things we find about women in politics is something called the gender gap. And that's a question of whether men and women vote differently when they do vote. We know that at this point in time, more women are registered to vote than men. Women vote at a higher percentage than men. So they're really more than 50% now. And that there's about a 7-point gap in women being more likely to vote for Democratic candidates than for Republican.
Liz, go ahead and ask your question. I know you have a question.
Yes, I'm wondering, I know that social issues, am I right, tend to be more important to women than to men when they're deciding who they're going to vote for. Social issues like abortion, like gay rights. Is that just as important? Is that, I know that things like pro-life, pro-choice tends to resonate with women voters, and that has been a big topic in some of the debates that we've had. What I would like to ask you is, who do you think is handling that topic the best? Is it Ron Paul because he's a gynecologist? Does he know what's up?
It's interesting because there's an assumption that women care most about that issue, but because it's so evenly divided among women, it really doesn't have as much impact on elections. Women care as much about the economy as men do. And when we talk about a gender gap, there's about a 7-point difference. But when we talk about voters and an economic gap, we're talking about more like a 12, 15-point difference. That if you're rich, you're going to vote Republican, and if you're poor, you're going to vote Democrat. And we know that women are more likely to be poor, they're more likely to be single mothers, and they're more likely to be older and dependent on government support. So all of those are predictors that they'll vote Democrat rather than Republican. Now, Barack Obama did much better than John McCain among women in 2008, even with Sarah Palin on the ticket. Now, that could be because Sarah Palin didn't have as much of an impact on women. It could be that he did better than he would have without Sarah Palin. But we do know that compared to Obama, Obama who got 56% of women votes compared to 43% for McCain. So there's a pretty significant gap there.
Well, Dr. Johnson, we're about out of time. We're past out of time, actually, I think. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. We'd love to have you back anytime. We're about to take our last break of the night. Coming up for all of you Ron Paul fanatics, we're going to see what he's been up
You know when you said, "That's so gay," you probably thought it didn't matter.
Well, it mattered to me.
Nine out of 10 lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgendered students report being harassed at school in the last year. You don't mock race or religion. Why mock sexuality?
Hello, my name is Matt.
I'm Sean, we're 303.
And right now you're watching Mercer 99.
All right, that's our show. I want to first thank Dr. Lori Johnson. Thanks so much for having us. Jittery Joes, thank you guys so much. Look at all these students studying. It's not even finals time right now. That's what I'm talking about. Liz, go ahead and tell us about Ron Paul.
Well, I know that we're all wondering, what the f is Ron Paul up to? Well, he skipped campaigning in Florida, presumably to work on Nevada, but he wasn't too busy to give an interview to CNBC on Monday where he once again championed the gold standard. It's easy enough for old Ronnie to champion the gold standard, seeing as how he can spin straw into it in an attic somewhere. The only problem with Ron's straw into gold strategy is that he's going to eat all of our firstborn children unless we can guess his name. That's our show. Thank you.